I cannot emphasize enough what a gift that was. Because truly, my mother's emotional suffering was worse than her physical suffering. And that's why hospice is so important. And for those of you who don't know it, hospice is a team approach, and it includes not only a nurse who works very closely with the primary care physician and is specially trained in end of life compassionate care, but also the spiritual counselor, also a social worker, also a bereavement counselor. And they all work as a team to help the patient's whole body, mind, spirit, emotions, and works with the whole family. They were available to us. There were times when I called and needed to speak with somebody just to see if I was doing the right thing, or I needed to just cry with somebody because I wanted to be strong in front of my mother and didn't want to cry in front of her. Hospice is an incredibly wonderful program that is woefully understood in this country and woefully underutilized. Too many people think it's something that it isn't. Too many people don't know what it is in the first place. Too many doctors are too reluctant to refer patients to hospice care soon enough because they feel that by acknowledging there's not a cure, somehow that's a failure on their part. The expression, "there's nothing more we can do," should be expunged from the medical lexicon because there is something more that you can do. You can refer the patient to hospice care. And you can do so sooner rather than later because hospice care is actually all about the philosophy that we adopted in my family. It's about living. It's about quality of life. When we were first referred to hospice, the nurse came to my house, or my dad's house, and met with him and me. And my mother had been in the hospital after having seizures that really signaled she had turned a corner to a more grave situation. And so during this intake interview, I proceeded essentially to lecture the nurse about our philosophy. We brought her home to live, not to die, and I went on and on and on, as a first daughter can do. And she listened and, made good eye contact and affirmed what I said. And then she put her hand on mine and she said, "Linda, that's what hospice is all about. It's about living. It's about quality of life." And maybe I should have known that. I didn't know that. But the hospice team made the unbearable bearable for my mother and for us. And thanks to the hospice team, she lived fully. She laughed and loved until the very end. And when the end came, she was with family. She died with dignity. She died without pain, and she died without regrets. And that's a wonderful thing. That's a wonderful thing. Unfortunately, I believe it is the exception rather than the norm in this country for a number of reasons. And I think she experienced the kind of end-of-life care that everybody is entitled to. And one of the problems is that we don't talk enough about death in our society. It's a taboo. I think we're unique in that respect as Americans. We just don't talk about it. And there are several movements afoot to encourage more conversations, more timely conversations about death. Because the research shows the vast majority of us, 90% of us, want to be sure that we can give our loved ones a good death, that we want to be able to respect their wishes. And yet almost as many people, if asked, would say they don't know what those wishes are. And that's because there's not been conversation about end-of-life wishes. So one initiative that I'll just bring to your attention because I'm a huge fan is called the Conversation Project. And it was started a couple years ago by Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Ellen Goodman. And the goal of this organization is to encourage conversations about death and end-of-life wishes and compassionate care while there's time, to do so in a relaxed way. She's encouraging conversations at the kitchen table or in the living room rather than in the ambulance or the ER or the ICU when it may be too late. And through the telling of stories, others are being encouraged. The telling and the hearing of stories, others are being encouraged to have that conversation sooner rather than later. So you may want to check out the Conversation Project. And I certainly encourage you to think of hospice care as perhaps the most compassionate end-of-life care option that's available. If you follow the news, you know that for the past 2 years, a physician-assisted suicide bill has been presented in the Connecticut legislature and debated, and twice it didn't come out of committee. But the expectation is that it will be reintroduced this year, and it may stand a better chance of passing. I was asked to testify at the hearing in the previous 2 years, not because I wanted to advocate for or against physician-assisted suicide. I chose not to do that. What I chose to do was to advocate for hospice care and greater awareness about hospice as a compassionate end-of-life option that is patient-centered, patient-directed, and takes care of the whole person. So I told my story of hospice, and I've been spreading the hospice gospel, if you will, out of gratitude for the team, for the care that we received. As I said, too few people know what it is. Too many think it's something that it isn't, and too few are experiencing the kind of care that my family was fortunate enough to receive.